All right, it's still Monday. I'm leaving the office. It's the 25th. I never know what day it is. Yeah, let's get going here. It says it's going to be an hour to drive, which is pretty shit, but that's okay, I guess. I'm assuming I can get into the fast lane and cut off 20 minutes, but we'll see. Maybe not. It's kind of rainy, dark. People suck at driving, the usual. So I wanted to go through another topic that was submitted. And so this is just a friendly reminder. I'm going to keep saying this to folks. If you want me to go over topics, just comment below. I will try to prioritize them, especially right now. I don't have like an overwhelming, there's not like millions of people that watch the channel and stuff. So like, whatever, if you want me to talk about something, I'll I'll try to get it done. So if you don't want to comment because the topic you want me to go through, you want to be anonymized, just send me a message on social media. Pick any platform. Just look for Dev Leader, or my full name is Nick Cosentino, and send me a message. I will anonymize it. The more context you give, the more I can try to share my perspective. So big thanks to folks that have done that already. I think it's pretty cool that you want me to go through stuff, so happy to do it. So the topic is going to be related to one that I've done before. So someone was asking about like a software engineering day in the life, and I shared that, but had to give the disclaimer, like, out of the last 12 plus years of my career, I've been like an engineering manager for most of that. The first 8 years of those, though, I was a software engineer, but also kind of had like a dual role as a manager as well. So I could share my perspective from when I was still like spending time writing code in my day job, and then I had to add in like, by the way, like here's here's what I observe like my team and stuff doing. So a little bit more disconnected from it now. But this topic, people were saying, well, that's cool, but like, what about as an engineering manager? What does a day look like in the life of an engineering manager? So I figured I'd chat through that. We got an hour to go over it together. This person's driving in 2 lanes like an absolute imbecile. My God, just get wrecked, pal. What an absolute moron. Anyway, like I said, it's going to be a good drive. So, engineering managers, what we do is we wake up, we go commute to the office, and then we drive home. That's it. No, okay, so I'm going to give you a couple of different angles from this, because obviously, like, my day is going to be different from anyone else's day. So, my core work hours, I'm going to share, like, the way I want to do this is tell you how I approach my day, and then try to give you some generic parts as well, because if you're just curious, like, you know, whatever, you don't care about my day specifically, but like what it looks like in general, we'll go through that. But my core work hours are essentially 9 to 5, but because I interact with people across different time zones and stuff, like, the reality is I'm up early enough. Like, I go to CrossFit and stuff, and like I wake up for 5 to go to CrossFit at 6. So if I'm up and there's chatter online, like if I'm needed and I can be helpful, sometimes I'll engage. So what you'll notice as I'm talking through a bunch of this stuff is like my work-life boundaries blur significantly. And this is not an expectation I have on anyone else. Even my manager does a very good job of explaining the same type of mindset that I have, which is like, in our roles, it's not uncommon to be engaging with stuff at like bizarre times, but we need to over communicate that that's not the expectation for other people. So especially for his role, like he's at like partner level at Microsoft. So as a partner group engineering manager, so manager of managers at the partner level, the amount of impact in his circle of influence is very great. So there's going to be people in Europe, in India, in Suzhou, China, like across the world, right? that he'll have to interface with. And sometimes, like, at least I know how he views it and how I view it for my own career. I've always kind of looked at it this way, like, if I can be helpful at a certain time, I will kind of go outside of my way to do it. So sometimes that means earlier in the morning than I might expect, and sometimes that means later in the evening than I might expect. I'll get engaged on stuff. But I do try to be fair to myself, and this is what I share with my team too. Like, if you are doing stuff outside of like normal hours, don't make it a habit to like just put in tons of extra time. Like, do the extra hours if you need to, but like then take a longer lunch, start later on a given day, or leave earlier on a given day. Like, know that we have these flexible schedules where, yeah, like sometimes you need to give a little bit more, but like it should not feel give and never take. So that's something I need to work with my team on too, and over communicate it, but I try to practice it myself more these days. When I was in a startup, it was never that way. And it was not because anyone expected it, but it was always give. And, I felt like that's, I don't know, not expected, but that's just how I worked. So even when I go on vacation now, I will let my team know, if you need me, message me. It'll be delayed, and I will be explicit if I'm going on a vacation where I can't be reached. I'll just say, like, this time, no. Like, I won't be around a computer. Don't expect it. But other times, I try to let them know, like, reach me if you need me. It'll just be delayed. But that's how I operate. So my core hours, 9 to 5, like I said. And if we're focused, like, primarily on work, usually the beginning of my day is like I'm catching up on email and communications, especially because we have teams in different geographies across the world. And that means that there's going to be communication from overnight and stuff that, like, I really should be catching up on. There could be incidents, there could be just things that, like, people were blocked on or needed a engagement with, like, in different working hours. So I generally start my day doing that. How much time I spend doing that can vary from day to day. Maybe there's literally nothing to catch up on, and so I do a quick check, and great, I'm through my email pretty quick. And other times, like, that might take up a good chunk of the morning. But typically in a day, not every single day, but I have a lot of one-on-ones, right? Because I think there's 11 or 12 people that I have as direct reports right now. And I try to spread out my one-on-ones primarily in 2 days, and I'll explain this in a moment. And then there's a couple that are, like, outside of that, but I load my one-on-ones into a couple of days just so that I can focus on that for the day. It's extremely draining, not because I don't like working with my team and talking with my team. I very much do. But I'm introverted, so it's just a lot of energy that goes into those conversations, and I feel exhausted at the end of the day. But I do that because it's a theme for the day, right? I know that when I start that day, I'm dedicating my time to something specific. So my Mondays, like today, and my Thursdays are generally very heavy one-on-one days. So those conversations, again, with my team, all different levels, they're currently all done weekly, and those are times where, I talked about this in the last video, not intended to just be status updates. Try to make sure that we're at least sprinkling in career conversations and other stuff. Obviously, it's pretty common for people to share some amount of status, so that's fine, but try to steer people away from that being the only thing, right? Like, we should be talking about growth, career opportunities, challenges, what gets them engaged, that kind of stuff. So if you think about it, if I have, let's round down to 10, right? Just if I have 10 direct reports, each one is 30 minutes, right? So that's 5 hours. That's almost a full workday every week, sort of directly for one-on-ones. Now, the reality is some of those go over, some of those conversations go over. Sometimes there's like follow-up conversations and stuff from one-on-one. So you could expect that like out of 5 working days, 1 day completely in terms of time allocation is entirely for just directly talking in one-on-ones at a minimum. So the other things that I do in my days are sync meetings. So I have, how many? I have 4, like we call them feature crews at Microsoft. They're just like sub-teams, I guess you would call them. In terms of direct reports, I have, I think 3 of those, I guess, are groups of direct reports. And then 1 is like what we call like a V team, a virtual team. I got to figure out how to move over lanes here. This is bad, but it's hard to see the people flying by. We did it. So there's, I think, 4 sync meetings that I do for V teams, and now with this project I'm leading, there's a 5th. So that's another minimum of like 30-minute sync meetings. Actually, one of those V team ones is multiple syncs a week. So it's basically not quite another full workday of just sync meetings, but I have these sync meetings where we're talking about status updates. This is generally something like, if you think about like Agile or Scrum or whatever, like call it like a stand-up, but instead of doing it every day, it's closer to once a week. This isn't like no one is sitting there at Microsoft like trying to prescribe it as like, hey, we're Agile. But it's just a way that the team that's working on something can get on the same page in a dedicated way. I really have to sneeze. Pardon me. Fuck. Oh, I didn't swear. Sorry, YouTube. So another thing about that too is like the V teams can be cross geographies as well. So we have to make sure that when we're scheduling these things, it's like time zone friendly, which can be really challenging when you have like, say 4, I can't count anymore. When you have like a handful of these V teams or your core teams, and you have people that are in different geographies, because there's only so many days of the week that you can schedule something like at the end of the day. Plus, there's other meetings that get scheduled in those time slots too that aren't just these like feature crew sync up meetings, which I'll touch on in a moment. But anyway, like I said, no one is telling me or trying to pretend like, hey, this is Agile. We're definitely a lot closer to like waterfall in terms of planning and how we approach stuff. But like there's not, since I've been at Microsoft, I have not seen like in terms of how it's played out, or anyone trying to say, we follow X process and it's waterfall or it's Agile. Not a single person has given it a name, which is good, because I would say, well, you're lying, because it's none of them. So we find what works, I guess, at least in the areas I work in. But the way that those sync meetings work is when they're really small, like I have one feature crew that's only a few people, and when we go over it for 30 minutes, like sometimes we'll do a deep dive on stuff. So it's not like a typical stand-up meeting where it's like, hey, only share very briefly if you're blocked or whatever. Sometimes we'll dive deep into stuff just because we got 30 minutes, it's everyone together, and we might as well like, put some focused effort into something. So we might do a status update, and then someone will say, cool, like, do we mind like taking some extra time to like go over this issue, or I wanted to investigate these metrics, like, can we review them together? So it's a good opportunity for that kind of stuff. And then in other scenarios when there's more people, and we're trying to be very, very conscious of like running over time, we'll try to park that stuff, right? Like, give your update, let us know if you're blocked, that kind of thing, and just keeping it going. The project that I have started running recently, it's a 30-minute slot, and I've been finishing it in roughly 20 minutes. And I told people when we started the project, I said, look, you're probably going to be like, I don't want to be rude, but I'm going to be cutting people off if you're getting into the weeds on stuff. And I set the precedent early on, and I feel like I haven't had to cut anyone off, which is cool. I think people understand, like, it's a very decentralized project, if I can call it that, or frame it that way. So there's truly not a ton of value in diving deep on stuff in that setting, because most people will be like, this just literally does not apply to me. And I think people recognize that, which is pretty cool. But yeah, those sync meetings, there's a handful of them. And I would say as a manager, it's kind of tricky because it's like, it's many different areas to focus on. Sorry, I got to switch a bunch of lanes here, so I'm trying to look for a good opening. So if I stop talking, it's because I'm trying to plan my merge. Come on, buddy. Got two more to go. So yeah, it's like, it's a lot to pay attention to in terms of like what's going on across these feature crews. It's really nice, like in the team I'm on now, like I feel like I have good PM support. So they play a really significant role with trying to make sure like we're all focused on this stuff together. That way too, like, and I should have mentioned that, like I have sync meetings with my PMs as well. So those are more meetings. If you haven't figured it out, my job is a lot of meetings. And I'm not complaining about that because the work I do is meeting with people a lot. So relying on my PMs for more context in and out of those sync meetings is super helpful. It's like, I know their focus is making sure like stuff is going according to plan, that we're delivering stuff to partners that's expected, or things that we've communicated to the business, like we plan on having these done with these timelines. Like I can really lean on them, and I'm very thankful for that. So in those sync meetings, my goal primarily is to make sure that I'm getting people unblocked. So if people are sharing updates and everything's just good, it's like, okay, like should we be talking about like schedule, like are we on track, like is there room for optimizations? But generally the focus is like, hey, I'm blocked on this, and we try to come up with a plan to get someone out of that. I don't know, that part's probably not super outside of the ordinary from what other people probably experience at work. It's just that as an engineering manager, like I have to be in a bunch of those just for my own team. So that's where I'm trying to call that out as something that's maybe a little bit unique. If you're an individual contributor, so the people on my team, they might be in one, maybe two of those sync meetings, especially if they're part of a V team. And again, the V team is just generally like some cross-functional or cross-team virtual team that's come together. So they might not have so much of a heavy load on sync meetings, but from my own experience, I have to be at a bunch of them. So in a given day, I will generally have one-on-ones. Like I said, my Mondays and Thursdays are pretty heavy. Then the sync meetings are kind of spread out. If I have a team that's only based in North America, then I try to get that in the middle of the day or whatever, and not at that like extra special time towards the end of the day where we overlap with China, which is very helpful for meeting with them. So because we're a platform team, and the last team I was on is a platform team, there's like a service review type meeting. So we will have another meeting for that kind of thing, to chat through the health of our service, like incidents, anything that's ongoing like that. Just general awareness of what's going on with our live service. And that's done at the team level. So I manage a team, but it's part of a greater team, which is part of another greater team. So that sort of weekly service review is done not just with my team, but sort of outside of that as well, which is good. But there is another weekly service review that is part of the even larger team, almost like an organizational level. So that's an interesting one. I don't attend that every week, but that's a really interesting one, especially for just learning about all the stuff that's going on. Again, as a platform team, like even if, I wasn't required to go to that meeting because I had nothing to present, or I wasn't part of some incident or something, it can be an interesting one to attend because you can learn a lot about what's going on in the greater organization that's using the platform or parts of the platform that you're responsible for. So it's definitely a cool one to tune into. Okay, so what else do I do in a day? There's sometimes like a lot, and I should talk about the startup stuff as well, because you're hearing lots of Microsoft things, which is going to have its own bias. But there's planning, so there's a lot of like seasonal things that will happen too. And one is planning, where periodically we'll get together. My God, I got to get out of this lane. This is a death trap. I got a big truck behind me. I got a big truck in front of me. And then we got a bunch of dummies trying to move between lanes. So everyone's slamming on their brakes. Yeah, but planning happens periodically at sort of different scales, right? So infrequently we do very large planning, and that will be on when I say large planning, I mean a larger time scale, larger time horizon. But that can take time, like preparing documentation for that. A lot of meetings to coordinate, like basically even within the team, like working with my product managers and just getting on the same page and discussing with them what priorities they're hearing from the business or partner teams, and then aligning with them on like engineering effort. And again, I'm so thankful that with this team I have like really good product support. It can, I don't know, I feel like it can make or break like working relationships in terms of like how the team operates, because when you don't have good product support, like number one, I've been in situations where we don't even need it. But number two, if you do have product owners and like product managers, however you're kind of setting this up as a dedicated role, if they're not involved, like it's really challenging. Because if they want to have any say and they're not involved, it feels very disconnected. So just a heads up there. I'm pretty thankful. What else? So planning meetings, that's not all the time though. There are meetings, again, more seasonal for like promotions and rewards. So those come up a lot because the primary promotions and rewards are like once a year. But there's like off-cycle promotions. So there's opportunities for more conversations around that. I don't have a skip level one-on-one with my manager, like my manager's boss right now. I think we've joked because we've seen each other at the office a bunch, and like even today, like I was chatting with him a couple times. So I do get FaceTime with him, which is good, but probably would be worth like getting that done. I mean, like I said, we've talked about it, so it's probably something I should, I don't know, maybe, I know he's busy, like we're all busy, maybe I should just be like, hey, like let me put this on your calendar periodically. Probably be good. But again, that doesn't feel urgent to me because at least I get FaceTime with him, right? If we were very disconnected, then I would say like we probably need a forcing function, and I would want like a skip level one-on-one to like basically just to bridge a gap. But fortunately, it's not quite like that. What else? What else goes on day to day? So like you might ask, like, okay, well, what do I do when I'm not just having meetings with people? There's also design docs to review. I do code reviews less frequently and less in depth than I would, especially as a software engineer. But they still happen. And I try to let people know too, like, if there's, if they put me onto a code review, I will give them feedback on things that I'm comfortable with, but I'm not going to like go blindly, like approving pull requests and stuff, like if I don't know what's going on. So I will say like, hey, like, you know, this looks good from what I can see, but you'll need someone else to sign off on this. So I do spend time reviewing code. The previous team I was on, there were a lot more C# developers that were pretty new to C# at least. So there were opportunities there where when they were coding stuff, I could say, hey, like, put me on that, and then I can at least give you feedback on like your C# stuff. There might be some domain knowledge that I don't have that level of depth. Like, I haven't written in that code base, so even though I know C# and I have my own like practices and stuff like that, that might not be what's in the code base. I might not know the architecture of some things, so like, you can't expect that feedback from me, but I'll still do the review and give them whatever feedback I can. Design docs, so I spent a bunch of time on that, and that's like that's not just internal to our team, because we'll have partners that are like, they're working on things and asking for reviews and stuff, so spend time on that. I have to draft them sometimes, so it's pretty rare that I'm drafting like a design doc, because at least like a super technical one, because I'm not the one rolling out or creating code for like architecting something and designing something. But there's been a couple things, especially like even rollout strategies and things like that, that I've tried to document and put together. Yeah, so lots of writing and lots of meetings. Like mostly summarizes my day. I want to switch gears, and maybe I'll think of some more things, but I want to talk about startup life, because this was a little bit different. And maybe you'll see maybe like a little bit more of like a personal kind of approach, because maybe what I described, you're like, yeah, that sounds pretty generic. So I think my time at a startup, though, was a little bit more unique. So I would generally start my days, again, I said this earlier in this ramble, but I worked a lot, and I realized if I started my days earlier, I could get some like focus time right at the start of the day. So I used to try and start a little earlier, try to get into the office maybe an hour before most people come in. It's usually what I can maintain is like about an hour before, and what I can maintain is about an hour after as well. So maybe like a 10-hour day was like the minimum at the office. So I would get some focus time at the beginning and some focus time at the end. But as I mentioned, what was a little bit unique is I was also coding on top of managing teams. So that focus time would generally be that I could go get some coding done. So I would have generally features that weren't, like, I would try not to take on things that would block other people. Throughout the 8 years that I was doing that, there was absolutely no way to avoid that entirely, but I wanted to make sure that my team could work on, features that I could help them navigate. But like, if I needed to spend a day like helping someone or doing manager stuff, they're not going to be like, man, like Nick's holding us back, like he's also on the team, right? So I would try to make sure that I could separate that kind of stuff out. Early on in my management journey, I prioritized one-on-ones less, or they were less consistent. So I did not do a good job of that early on, but tried to make it a priority later from a consistency perspective, because when it's all over the place, it's like, I don't know, it doesn't, I'm sure it does not feel good to employees to have that. But I'll also say, because they were living in startup world too, like they understood that we always had like crazy priority shifts and stuff going on. So they probably understood why it wasn't consistent, but at the same time, like that's not a good excuse. So now I think for the most of the time that I was at the startup, I had small teams. At the very beginning, I had a really big team. I had like, I think between 13 to 17 people at one point in the beginning. It was just like insanity. It didn't really make sense. And so there was a lot of people, and in the middle, like the most of the time, it was closer to like, 4 to 6 people. And then towards the end, I basically like doubled up and had multiple teams. So in terms of one-on-ones and stuff, like I had to carve out time for that. By the end of it, I was having more dedicated one-on-ones, prioritizing that consistency. We had less of a documentation culture where I was before at the startup. So less of a documentation culture, but a lot more like, it was also in person. So a lot more like brainstorming, whiteboarding sessions and stuff like that. Like I feel like I don't do a lot of that these days. And that, I don't want to say that's like, oh, that's a big tech thing. I think that's just the remote nature. Like it's a lot more inclusive to be trying to have conversations in design documents or in a call together versus like, hey, like you're on the call, but we're going to whiteboard. And I think it would be cool to kind of go back to having more whiteboards and stuff involved. But I think people are finding what works, but definitely a lot more whiteboarding sessions and like ad hoc, like let's just get together and like draw pictures of what's happening and sort through things. So spent a bunch of time doing that. Planning before at the startup was we would do like off-site planning, and it was shorter scale than what we do at Microsoft. So it happened more frequently, but oh man, it was more frequent, but like the amount of effort that went into planning was a lot less. Not because it like was worse or something like that, but I think we realized that as a startup, we're like, anything we're talking about in our plans right now, the only, like, and I still say this to this day, but like the only thing I can guarantee about plans we make is that they're not 100% right? It's just like things are going to change. But the offsite stuff would be really good for like talking strategy, making sure we're agreeing on the direction we want to go. We did follow closer to like either Scrum or Kanban, depending on the year that I was working at the startup. So in terms of like ceremonial meetings and stuff like that, like we had retrospectives, daily stand-ups, that kind of thing. So a typical day, like I said, focus time in the morning, then people came in, we get our daily stand-up out of the way. I've mentioned this before, the team I had for a while, like one of the core teams, we got to the point where like a stand-up meeting's almost useless because we already know what everyone's doing. So it was usually more for our product owner just to catch up, which is still good. And then it was nice because if there wasn't other teams, this is my personal experience, if there wasn't other teams that were like, hey Nick, like we need to pull you into this because you have some knowledge from, the years that you've been here. If that wasn't happening, then it was either like focus time or like those brainstorming design type conversations I was talking about. So it felt like, I don't know, it felt like a lot less meeting and a lot more dedicated time to making tangible progress is really how I would frame it. But I think I need to acknowledge that like I don't want to make it sound like, oh, it's just because Microsoft is bad or something like that, or it's nothing of the sort, right? We're talking about different scales of things. Like when I was at this startup, we had just had like a satellite office in Ottawa and we were in Kitchener-Waterloo. So in terms of coordinating across geographies, it's really not that far away. So sure, there's a few hours between the offices, but like you're not talking about trying to get on a call with someone, 12 hours away from you. So the cross-geo thing, very different. The number of teams, very different, right? The layers of indirection between like where I am as an engineering manager and executive level, like at the startup, was very, very thin, right? Like I could go and like easily I could go talk to the founder, who's the CTO, or talk to the CEO. As long as they weren't traveling, like I knew that I could go, get their attention if I really needed it. So obviously at Microsoft, like I'm not like knocking on Satya's door and being like, hey, what's up? Like, let's chat. And there's so many more levels in between. So as you might expect, there's going to be like more process in place just due to the levels of indirection. So it creates this side effect that things do go slower, and there's a lot more overhead for trying to coordinate. Again, I'm not saying that like it's bad. It's not something that I love personally, but I understand why it happens. There's just a lot more coordination to get done than what I have seen historically from a startup, at least, right? I'm trying to think what else from like a day-to-day kind of thing. Oh man, this guy's got to move. You're cramping my style, buddy. I got to switch lanes. Up, 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 up. I don't know if any of the sound comes through, but I like this car. Okay, so yeah, maybe I'll talk a little bit about like my like one day. Like, let's talk about today was a little bit of an anomaly, I guess. But I'll talk about what today would look like normally, like a Monday for me. So my Monday looks like waking up at 5 a.m. To go to CrossFit for 6. No, I don't like waking up at 5 a.m. I don't even like CrossFit, to be honest with you, but I do it because I have switched away from bodybuilding to CrossFit. It'll be a healthier thing for me. My wife does it and she loves it. So it's cool that we can go do that. She's way better at it than me. Don't tell her I said that. She knows. What's this person doing? How many lanes are you in, buddy? Okay, we're doing this game, I guess. So usually I'm pretty beat up from CrossFit, though. Oh, we're gonna use the cheater lane. So if I'm pretty beat up from CrossFit, when I come home from CrossFit, I go back to sleep. So I might go to CrossFit for a 6 a.m. class and get back at 7:30 in the morning, and then sleep for another 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and then get ready for work and that kind of thing. So it's maybe eating again, shower, blah, blah, blah. If I have to go to the office, that's like a day like today, so a Monday. And then I get a little bit of focus time before I have to hop on calls. So that's mostly where I was explaining like how I'm catching up on email and things like that. If I started the day and I already saw messages coming in, like say I wake up to go to CrossFit and I already see like stuff from China coming in, other teammates that are in, say, Eastern time zone, that have started engaging on conversations and stuff like that. Depending on what the day looks like, I might already be kind of paying attention and just re-engaging on that stuff. But then I have one-on-ones and then lunch. So, a little bit of focus time, one-on-ones and lunch. So that's how I start the day at work. And then after lunch, it's one-on-ones, and I have 2 different like sync meetings for different. One's for a cross-team project, so almost like another V team kind of thing. And I guess the other one is a dedicated V team, so sync meetings for that. And then another one-on-one. And sometimes on Mondays, it's a good opportunity, it seems, for... Sorry, gotta make this turn. It's a good opportunity for like cross-geo meetings, right? Like, I don't know why, but Mondays seem to be pretty freed up. So it'd be like Tuesday morning in China, So if there's like an ad hoc thing where it's like, hey, we needed to meet to review this design doc or something like that, like it's usually a pretty open slot, I find, where people can reserve that time. So usually, like, it's pretty good. I usually don't have anything that comes up too late. But on like a day like today, for example, when I was leaving the office, I was even telling my skip, because we were chatting through some stuff today. I was just saying, hey, like if I'm needed still, like in the evening, like let me know. I'll be by a computer. Like there's enough stuff like that where it's like, if you can, for me at least, if I'm around a computer and I can be of help, then I will offer it. I don't know, I find it's pretty rare that I'm like, I try to like shy away from that. I would much rather just help, because I find in my role as an engineering manager, it's like, I know it's not necessarily the expectation, but like I don't feel like I'm doing my job my best unless I'm making myself available for people. So again, that's my personal thing. I just want to make sure that I offer that to people, right? Because I talked about this in the previous video, like from this morning, but when I was talking about burnout, I was saying, hey, look, like, reminder, as an engineering manager, my job is to enable my team to do their best work possible. And like, I am a support role at this point, right? I'm a support role. If I can help amplify the effectiveness of other people, that's how I become successful. So how does that work? Well, I try to make myself available, and that way, if there's difficult times and it's like literally based on a time of day thing, like, not to worry, just like message me, let me know you need help, and I will try to help. But as I mentioned, I have to consider work-life balance. It's also different now too. Like, I'm married. I'm obviously in a relationship because I'm married. When I was in startup life, wasn't in like long-term serious relationships. So like, I had that ability to just be like, I'm gonna work, and like no one's gonna get mad at me. I'm not taking time away from someone else. But obviously, like in a marriage, like that's different, right? I think my wife would understand if I was like, hey, look, I gotta work late tonight. She's not gonna be like, I hate you. But if I was doing that every night and I was like, oh, like, work again, she would probably say, like, are you, like, is everything okay with work? Like, I don't think it would be like she's mad at me, but more of a, like, looking out for me, like, are you sure this is the thing that you want to be doing? And I think she would feel, right? Like, she would know that that's going to have an impact on our marriage if I'm like literally never around. So, yeah, things are just different. And I don't say that in a bad way, obviously. It's, these are just differences in how I've kind of gone through my career as a manager. So I don't know if that makes sense. I'm watching, you can't see it, obviously, because this camera's pointed at me, but there was someone who had a left turn, and there was someone crossing the road, and they were going so slow, like impossibly slow. It almost felt like it should be like a Vine video. Remember Vines? Remember those? It almost seemed like a prank. Someone was being punked. But no, just someone walking super slow. So yeah, I think that's mostly like a day in the life for me. Some things to keep in mind, right? Every day is going to be a little different. There are days, today, for example, I'm not going to say any details about it, but like today was a completely anomalous day. So I had to rejig a lot of stuff. A lot of things that were planned for today just did not happen. That's okay. It's going to come up time to time. There's seasonal type things, like I mentioned, planning, promotions, rewards. Those are a little bit more seasonal. So how I'm spending my time will shift gears to accommodate for those things. But yeah, lots of meetings and lots of coordination, I would say, is how I spend most of my time. So I hope that helps. I don't know if I got anything else. I'm just glad you guys are hanging out. This person's gonna get into an accident. Did a left turn from not the turn lane. Like an absolute dummy. You can't, let me explain the street layout. Now I'm angry. This is me angry. I'm not actually angry. Okay, so there's 2 lanes, but like a center turning lane. So in total, 3 lanes, okay? Now, this person is in my lane in front of me, and they put their left turn signal on, and they stop. But there's a whole center turning lane that's open, and you can turn both ways. No oncoming cars in that center lane. They just stop in our lane, and then try to turn left. It's just people absolutely do not understand how to drive, and it's dangerous. Now the police are here. Oh, there's 3. Holy cow! There's 3 police cruisers to pull over 1 person. That happens a lot here. I don't know why. Like, I rarely ever see like 1 cruiser pulling someone over. It's always like 2 to 4 that have like swarmed some vehicle every time. Maybe I live in a dangerous place. I don't know. We want to move. Side note, I'm planning to do that. We want to move out of here. I think we like our house, but like, we'd like to upgrade. I think the neighborhood we're in and stuff, like, we'd like that to be nicer. I can't see anything where I'm backing up here. Whew. It's one of those roll the window down so you can see type things. But yeah, I think we want to move. Probably get a little bit more land, a little bit more modern house. Just they cost money, and I'd like some more of that. So we'll see. I want another car too, but we can't be doing cars. We can't be doing cars. House first. But this one would be super fun to wide body, and then a little bit more power. But we'll see about that. For now, it's staying stock, but I'll see you later.